Here we go. All right. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for coming on out to our community forum this morning. I know it's a beautiful day outside. You woke up and you thought, I want to do nothing more than learn about sewer infrastructure today. It wasn't your first thought? I'm sorry to hear that. Okay. We will try. We'll certainly inform you at the least and answer any questions you have. So I want to thank you all for coming out. My name is Ryder Smith. Back there is Trent Sunahara. We do communications and outreach work for the city. And the city council has made communications and outreach about the sewer improvement project here in the city a big priority. They want people to come out. We've done one of these forums already earlier this week, had a good turnout. We have a very good turnout, I think, for Saturday morning. So I appreciate you all coming out and, frankly, being involved in what's going on in your community, right, and having some civic engagement. We don't have enough of that in our society, but I appreciate you all making an effort to change the course of that. We got refreshments up here, so please feel free to partake. We got lots of coffees to keep you highly stimulated during this discussion, and sugar as well. So we'll get about an hour and a half sugar high, and then you're going to crash bad. But as long as you're good during this meeting, we're quite happy. We have a map up here on the wall that's going to be referenced. You're going to see some color-coded areas on there for what are called priority basins in our sewer improvement project. And one of our speakers, Dennis, will be speaking about that in a bit. So after the meeting, we've got a little visual you can go with. I want to also note that logistically, we have restrooms. So you just go out and inside City Hall and turn around to the left, and there are restrooms in there for you to use those if you need at any point during the presentation today. Okay, so with that, I just want to make a couple quick comments. Actually, before I do that, I'm going to introduce Key Lim. So Key Lim, if you could stand up real quick. So we've made a point of having lots of city staff here this morning to ensure that we have everybody here to answer your questions, give you thorough answers. Also, just to note, we are recording this, so it's going to be on MILLBRAE TV. So we'll be using the microphone to not only make sure our audio gets picked up, but when you go to ask a question, we need to use the microphone so the people at home can hear it, and we may choose to even repeat your question just to make sure the people at home can hear it, because all your questions are going to be important to us. So we have city staff here. Key Lim is the Public Works Director for the city of MILLBRAE. He is the subject matter expert on all things water infrastructure, sewer infrastructure, all the things that really make a city go. And so I want to give Key a chance to introduce himself and introduce the staff that are here too. Key?
Sure. Good morning. I'm Key Lim, Public Works Director. And here I'd like to introduce first Samir, City Attorney's Office. And we have Mike. Mike is our supervisor for the sewer collection system. And then Mike's our right-hand man over there. Chris is our lead worker. And we have our former Public Works Director, Peter, back there. And thank you. We have Dennis Deemer this morning, and Dennis is going to do a quick presentation on the topics for us today.
Thank you, Key. So the sewer system is kind of an unsung hero of modern civilization. And it's horribly underappreciated, right? There's nobody who advocates and stands up and waves signs and said, more sewers, right? That you don't demand that. But if you ever want to watch a bad day in your household, try to flush a toilet and have it not work, right? Or try to run a dishwasher and have it back up. Like, those are ugly days. So we as a society tend to take our sewer systems for granted. And that's unfortunate, because at the end of the day, they're actually absolutely critical infrastructure, much like water, is absolutely critical to not only your day-to-day life, but the value of your property and our capacity to have congested civilization where you have lots of people living in a tight area. So really understanding your sewer infrastructure, as mundane as it sounds, is ultimately important. And today we're going to learn a ton about that. And you're going to come away very informed, hopefully. And you're going to hopefully ask us some great questions, too, about some of the policy challenges what we face in the city and how to address those. All right, so with that, I want to invite Dennis Deemer up to the podium here, make a presentation. Dennis Deemer has many years of working in local government throughout the Bay Area. And then he's also done lots of advisory and consulting work, working with public agencies to address wet weather programs. And a wet weather program is essentially how you address what we're going to learn about today, sewer system overflows, which happen when there's lots of rain, and the rain intrudes into your sewer system, and you get sewer system overflows, which then create environmental concerns and have had other implications for the city. So he has a great kind of global view on this challenge and how cities work to address this. He's been consulting with the city for a while now on helping us work through this challenge and has a great perspective. So we got about a 25-minute presentation to walk through, and then at the end of that, we'll go to Q&A to ask questions, and the whole team here will be ready to answer those questions. So with that, Dennis, if you want to grab the mic and take us away.
Thank you, Ryder. Good morning. So I want to tell you about the city's sewer modernization program this morning. And just to start, a little bit of background on MILLBRAE'S sewer system. So we have 55 miles of collection sewers. Collection sewers are basically the pipes that deliver your wastewater from your homes and businesses to the treatment plant. The collection sewers in MILLBRAE range in size from 6 inches to 36 inches in diameter. They are 85% of these pipes are vitrified clay pipes, or VCP. It's an old material that was used in the past, maybe 40, 50 years ago. It was the standard. Unfortunately, it's brittle and subject to cracking and breakage. It's no longer the industry standard for collection sewers. Most of the pipes in MILLBRAE are on average 70 years old or older. The city has 3 pumping stations, Madrone, Hacienda, and Plaza Bay. Part of the sewer modernization program is to increase the capacity of the Madrone pumping plant. And then finally, the sewage treatment plant, wastewater treatment plant, has a capacity, combined capacity of 14 million gallons a day. Fortunately, the wastewater treatment plant was upgraded a couple, 3 or 4 years ago. That upgrade is complete. So in terms of the modernization program, we're focused on the collection sewers and the pumping stations. So, as Ryder briefly mentioned, MILLBRAE'S sewer system experiences sanitary sewer overflows, SSOs, during rain events, primarily the wet weather season. Sanitary sewer overflows, or SSOs, are caused by infiltration and inflow, I&I, of rainwater into the sewer system. And I'll explain I&I a little bit more in just a minute. So when the sanitary sewers overflow, it poses a potential public health risk, it pollutes San Francisco Bay, and most importantly, the sanitary sewer overflows are prohibited under the Federal Clean Water Act. So, a sanitary sewer overflow is any overflow, spill, release, discharge of untreated or partially treated wastewater from a sanitary sewer system. It's a photo of an overflow running down the sidewalk towards San Francisco Bay here in MILLBRAE. Let me just briefly describe a typical sewer connection. So this diagram lays out the different components in the collection system. Starts with the connection to your house plumbing. There is typically a cleanout right near the home. The upper portion of your sewer lateral, lower portion of your sewer lateral, which connects the homes to the public sewer mains in the street. There's also a cleanout typically right on the back side of your sidewalk. So two cleanouts, and then the upper lateral, the lower lateral connecting to the public sewer main. Inflow is when groundwater, rainwater, or other water sources enter into the sanitary sewer system through illegal roof connections or illegal storm drain connections illegally connected to the storm drain system. Infiltration is when those same water sources enter into the sanitary sewer system through cracks in your laterals due to root intrusion, cracks in manholes, or cracks in the sewer pipes themselves. This is a photo that was taken by the city when they video inspected the sewer system. It shows a vitrified clay pipe or VCP pipe that has a crack in it that is a source to allow rainwater to enter into the sanitary sewer system. This is another photograph that shows root intrusion into the sanitary sewer system that can cause blockages and also cracks in the sanitary sewers. So, inflow sources are illegal connections to the sanitary sewer system that allow rainwater to enter the sanitary sewer system. So that, again, is foundation drains, yard drains, roof drains from your roof leaders. It could be an uncapped upper lateral cleanout or lower lateral cleanout. And it could be an illegal connection from the sanitary system or from the storm system to the sanitary system. So in MILLBRAE, you have two separate systems. You have a sanitary sewer system that collects wastewater and delivers the wastewater to the wastewater treatment plant, and a separate a separate storm sewer system that delivers rainwater and takes rainwater away from the neighborhood and discharges it to San Francisco Bay. Two separate systems. When the sanitary system or the storm system is connected to the sanitary system, it allows rainwater to go directly into the sanitary system, and that causes the sanitary sewer overflows that we've been discussing. So, in 2009, San Francisco BAYKEEPER, which is a nonprofit organization, filed complaints against several San Francisco wastewater agencies, including MILLBRAE. And they alleged that pollutants from the wastewater collection system and the treatment system were causing sanitary sewer overflows and violated the Clean Water Act. A number of agencies entered into separate agreements with BAYKEEPER regarding their treatment systems and their sanitary sewer overflows. MILLBRAE entered into a settlement agreement with BAYKEEPER. It's also known as the Consent Decree in November of 2010. So the Consent Decree requires that the city reduce sanitary sewer overflows in the city's sewer collection system through an inspection of the system, video surveillance of the system to identify and correct defects, improve their preventive maintenance, make sure that root intrusion and the entry of the roots into the sanitary sewer system are eliminated, and also to make a number of capital improvements to remove infiltration and inflow sources. And the Consent Decree requires that all these improvements be in place by November of 2018. The Consent Decree also required MILLBRAE to develop what's called a Capacity Assurance Report. And the Capacity Assurance Report, or the CAR, is basically a technical analysis that looked at all of the necessary capital and capacity improvements needed in the system to eliminate sanitary sewer overflows. And this final CAR, or Capacity Assurance Report, was accepted by BAYKEEPER in 2014. The CAR identified capital improvements that included replacing aging collection sewer pipes, increasing sewer capacity in certain segments of the system, and replacing leaking sewer laterals. So the laterals that I showed you earlier connecting to the sanitary sewer are also a source of infiltration and inflow that the Capacity Assurance Report recommends repairing or eliminating. By improving both the publicly owned sewers as well as the publicly owned laterals, the overall improvement program for the cities designed to eliminate sanitary sewer overflows results in the lowest overall cost, has the best sustainability in terms of long-term performance for the system once it's repaired, and it provides future reliability and a better standard of performance for the collection system in the future. So the Sewer Modernization Program is the collective set of improvements that need to be made in order to eliminate the sanitary sewer overflows, come into compliance with the Consent Decree, and put the city's sewer system on a long-term path of sustainability and reliability. Has a $49 million cost over the next 5 to 10 years. 19 million of that 49 million is needed through 2018 to stay in compliance with the Consent Decree. And the city plans to use a combination of revenues, direct revenues from your wastewater bills, and issue bonds to fund the sewer program modernization costs. This past July 11th, the city approved a Clean Bay modernization fee that will bring in the necessary revenues to fund the program. As I mentioned, the approved program requires the rehabilitation of both public sewer mains as well as the lower and upper laterals, a comprehensive rehabilitation in the identified basins that results in the lowest overall cost to the city. So, by way of background, you know, when a community goes in and repairs just the publicly owned sewers, you get about 30 to 50% I&I removal. If you go in and do comprehensive rehabilitation in an area where you do the public sewer mains and the upper and lower laterals, you get up to 70% I&I removal. So by doing comprehensive rehabilitation, you can focus your dollars and your repairs in a given area and come into compliance cheaper than if you just did the public sewers randomly throughout the area. So the capacity assurance report identified 4 basins that are color-coded on this map here where the sewer collection systems and upper and lower laterals will be comprehensively rehabilitated. So it's the Madrone area, northwest of Cappuccino High School, 3 subbasins, 1, 2, and 3, as well as a subbasin on the lower, shown on the lower right-hand side here, Hillcrest subbasin number 3. The recommendation again is to go in and comprehensively rehabilitate the public sewers and the upper and lower laterals. Again, just the typical sewer connection. The plumbing upper lateral is defined as the section of the lateral from the home to the property right-of-way. That is typically privately owned, or that is privately owned. The lower lateral from the clean-out or the right-of-way to the publicly owned sewer is publicly owned. If that clean-out is in place, the city has accepted responsibility for the repair and maintenance and operation of that lower lateral that connects to the public sewer main. So the upper lateral, privately owned, lower lateral, assuming that that clean-out is in place, is publicly owned and part of the public sewer system. So repair or replacement of the upper laterals involves a number of steps. The first thing that takes place is there's an inspection. It's either pressure testing with air, or you go in and actually video inspect the upper lateral. You put a camera through the lateral. It involves installation of the two-way cleanout, that those cleanouts that are shown in the previous slide. Then if the video inspection or the testing identifies defects, there's a repair or replacement of the lateral. There's also what we call collateral damage. If you have to go in and repair that, sometimes you affect landscaping and hardscaping as well that has to be repaired once the lateral is fixed. There's plumbing permits involved typically, and then there's compliance inspection and a issuance of a certificate of compliance. That's typically good for 20 years. So once you go in and you repair your lateral, the city is satisfied that the repairs will last for at least 20 years. Current city ordinance requires that the laterals be inspected and repaired if necessary upon sale of the home or a major remodel. And the city's current ordinance provides for up to $1,000 credit from the city to assist with those repairs. I mentioned the priority basins. The capacity assurance report looked at, well, what if we just continued with the current ordinance? And how does that affect the ability to meet the consent decree timeline? The number of laterals that are repaired annually under the current ordinance and their geographic location being spread throughout the city don't provide enough frequency of repair to comply with the consent decree. And as I said, that the location of the upper laterals, they're not concentrated in these basins that have the most significant I&I problems, so they're not really contributing to the overall solution to reducing the sanitary sewer overflows. As I mentioned, the upper laterals are privately owned. So typically under the current ordinance, the responsibility for upper lateral basins rehabilitation lies with the homeowner. The cost responsibility for the upper laterals in a priority basin needed for CD compliance. In other words, the laterals in these priority basins and how those costs get allocated is really a city council policy decision. The city could pay the full cost. The city could decide, council could decide that the homeowner should pay the full cost in order to come into compliance, or the city could decide that there should be a sharing of cost. And this is something that is under discussion and is something that we hope to get information from the public on as part of these workshops and outreach efforts. If the city were to assist in the funding of those upper lateral repairs, there would need to be a determination that the private benefits from public funds, from the expenditure of public funds, is secondary to the benefit derived by the public in terms of public health and safety. So this is a legal determination that says it's in the city's best interest to spend public money on upper lateral repairs because it results in the lowest overall cost for the entire program. So kind of to conclude, the CAR program can be completed, is scheduled to be completed by the November 2018 consent decree deadline, with the possible exception of the upper lateral rehabilitation because of the need to get public input on the issue of upper lateral repairs and for the council to discuss and deliberate and decide on what the policy for the upper lateral should be. That, depending on how those discussions go, there's a question whether we'll be in compliance with that portion of the project by November of 2018. So the council policy decisions and legal determinations need to be in place, obviously, before the upper lateral work can begin. The staff is getting ready to do a pilot program for upper lateral repairs. About 20 homes have been selected, and the idea there is to look at the different types of laterals that the program will encounter, the length of the upper lateral, the slope of the upper lateral, whether the sewer main is in the street or in some cases in the backyard, the extent of hardscaping. All those different factors want to get information on so that the city will have better cost information on the scalability of the lateral repairs. So as opposed to the current situation where you have random repairs happening throughout the city, what will the cost be and what will the issues be if you're going into a neighborhood on a concentrated basis and repairing those laterals? We're conducting a public outreach program to make sure that the residents are fully informed on the overall sewer modernization program, as well as the issue of the upper lateral repairs and the cost allocation of those repairs. City staff is continuing to implement a number of the CAR projects so that we can be in compliance by November of 2018. This includes smoke testing throughout the service area, and in particular the priority basin. Smoke testing is a very cost-effective way to identify inflow sources. They basically inject smoke into the sanitary sewer system, and if there is an illegal roof connection or an illegal yard drain, you'll see smoke coming up from the roof, or you'll see smoke coming up from your yard drain, and that identifies the inflow source, and those are very cost-effective in terms of reducing I&I. There's also flow monitoring and modeling going on. So the city, when they make a repair in a given basin, they flow monitor ahead of time. Then once the repairs are made, they do follow-up flow monitoring, and then they're able to identify what percentage of the I&I has been removed as a result of those repairs. And there's, as I mentioned, also improvement projects to increase the conveyance capacity of certain sewer systems associated primarily with the Madrone pumping plant. And those projects are ongoing. City staff's also looking to hire a few additional folks to help with the program administration, this $49 million program, continuing to evaluate funding options, basically the balance between the bonds to be issued and the amount of revenue that can be used to fund the program on a pay-as-you-go basis. I mentioned the pilot program for the upper laterals that is about ready to get started as well. So the City Council really needs, as a matter of policy, to decide on the responsibility and funding for the upper lateral repairs in the priority basins. That's an issue that, as a result of the information we're gathering, the technical information on the pilot program on the upper laterals, combined with input we're getting from the community, that will be very helpful to the council in deciding how to allocate the costs for those upper lateral repairs. So, questions for the community. These are two of the questions that we hope to get responses from you today. Not any other question that you might have, certainly welcome, but we really want to understand how the City Council can best ensure that the costs for the private lateral repairs in these priority basins that I've described are addressed fairly for all ratepayers. And we'd also want to hear from you in terms of what additional information, either on the upper laterals or on the program in general, we could provide that would be helpful to you in understanding the overall program. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Dennis. All right, very efficient, right? Look at that, 23 minutes the guy was through it. You know more about sewers than 95% of America. Congratulations. You're going to learn some more here in a second. Mike, can I call upon you I'm going to call upon you, actually. Can you come up and explain our show and tell we have going on up here, just to give some context for our residents? This is a demonstration of a sewer main on upper lateral, so let me hand you the mic here.
Good morning, all. My name is Michael, Public Works Supervisor for the City of MILLBRAE. So not only did Key introduce me as the wastewater supervisor, I'm also the stormwater supervisor. So come winter, we are challenged a great deal with the City of MILLBRAE and our Public Works Department. We put in a lot of extra hours during inclement weather. So as Dennis has pointed out, our collection system and our stormwater system are two different utilities. They're not deliberately connected. But as Dennis has pointed out, a lot of yard drains and roof leaders, which should be going to San Francisco Bay, that rainwater when it falls should go to San Francisco Bay. Sometimes those rain leaders are tied into our wastewater system. So what we have here is a demo of our preferred method of replacing our vitrified clay pipe that we have in the ground, as Dennis and Key may have mentioned. It's over 70 years old, so we have to replace it. We have to make these improvements. A lot of the grade 4s and a lot of the grade 5s, which you may have seen in Dennis's pictures right there, the grade 4s and grade 5s, we're out there getting those replaced. Those are point repairs that we make, and we're trying to catch up. We're trying to stay ahead of BAYKEEPER and get those replaced. We got to get all of those done before, again, November of next year. So let me get back to this demonstration. HDPE pipe. This is a 6-inch HDPE pipe. Most of the pipe that we will be putting in the ground before November of next year will be 8-inch pipe. So 6-inch HDPE, which you may see out in the street. This is the 4-inch HDPE pipe that would be coming from your house. And then this right here would be the 4-inch cleanout that you should see in the sidewalk. Or as Dennis may have mentioned, you may have an easement in your backyard, and then this cleanout would be within 2.5 feet of our main in your backyard. And then this HDPE will continue on up towards your house. And then you would have another cleanout like this by your house, and then a check valve, which we have right here. So check valve, pretty much got a riser like what you have right here. And then for this 4-inch with the flap on the bottom, will only fit in one way. So if you did call a plumber out and he did take this out, well, there's no way for him to put this back and adversely affect your water coming from your house. So this pretty much, it will only fit in one way. The plumber, he can't mess it up, nor you as the homeowner shouldn't be able to mess it up if you did take it out to service it. If we are doing work on your street or in the easement behind your house, pretty much your construction probably in front of your house should probably take about a week if we are replacing from manhole to manhole. There's not necessarily a whole lot of open trenches. Just imagine if a line segment of 300 feet between manhole to manhole was to be replaced. We wouldn't necessarily do open trench for the whole 300 feet. We're pretty much able to insert HDPE pipe at the upstream manhole, and we are able to pull it through to the downstream manhole by pipe bursting methods. And then wherever your service lateral would be connected, then we would do an excavation right there. We would pull a new 4-inch HDPE service line from the sidewalk to our main in the street. Over the last couple of years, and not only did Dennis mention Madrone Basins 1, 2, and 3, then we've also got, I believe we said Hillcrest Basin number 3. We've already done a lot of repairs in the Madrone Basins 1 and 2. In January of 2016, we just finished putting 1.5 miles of pipe in the ground over in Madrone Basins 1 and 2. We've got another capital improvement project that's starting in a couple of weeks. We're going to be targeting a lot more of Madrone Basins 1 and 2. And then we have some other hot spots around town that we will also be replacing pipe. And that's another, so the capital improvement project that starts in a couple of weeks, we're going to replace almost 10,500 feet of pipe. That's a lot of pipe to put in the ground. And then, as Key has mentioned, before November of next year, we estimate between this project and maybe the rest of these projects, almost 8 miles of pipe in the ground before November of next year. We've got 55 miles of pipe. We're about to, total by November of next year, 8. So we're looking at close to 1/7 of our collection system to be replaced with HDPE pipe. So, thank you.
Thank you, Mike. And just to bring a little clarity, too, so the backflow preventer that he showed you here is designed to make sure that any effluent coming out of the sanitary sewer system doesn't actually come back up into your house, right? So that's the whole point of having one of these bad boys on your property. Okay, so we have 2 critical questions we'd love to hear from you all about, right? So not less questions from you, but more questions for you to give us some thoughts and feedback about prioritizing certain basins and the economics behind making that happen. We have a pilot project going on that's designed for us to really get a sense of what the costs are associated with doing a project like this and replacing multiple sewer laterals of different types to understand those costs, what the benefits are of doing a scaled project, right? If you could have each household do it, that would be one fee. But if you go to a contractor and kind of do a Costco-size replacement of sewer laterals, how much money can you save, right, if you're doing 500, for example? So lots of questions for you and questions for us. So let me start it off. I'll just invite my 2 subject matter experts to stand up here and join me. But what questions do you all have about anything you saw in the presentation today, or the priority basins, or anything else about sewer systems in this great city of Millbrae? All right, make sure you speak clearly into the microphone so we can hear you.
Okay, I was just curious. Today you mentioned that when a house is sold or being sold, it has to be upgraded with the laterals, correct? Who pays those fees today?
Currently, the property owner is paying for the repair costs. However, the city does provide a $1,000 rebate to help offset the costs.
And to clarify, it's not that it has to be replaced, it has to be inspected, and if there are any issues, those have to be fixed before you can actually close the transaction on the house or something along those lines.
Well, I've got a couple of different questions. In regards to the $1,000, is that just in the basin areas? Could we see the map again? Is that possible? Is that just in the basin areas, or if they sell their house anywhere in the city of Millbrae, is there a $1,000 help?
The current program of $1,000 rebate is provided to all, not just a priority basin.
You had multiple questions?
Well, yeah, but I don't know if I want to take the time to see.
Okay, we'll keep going around. Who else had a question? I saw a hand go up in the back here.
Well, thank you for the update and all the information. I do have a question regarding the $49 million investment. It seems like there are a lot of questions yet to be answered in terms of cost. How does that relate to the $49 million, or is that $49 million an overall estimate? Because it doesn't seem to, potentially it could be more than that, depending on some of the answers that come up for the questions that are outstanding.
Excellent. I know this has been heavily looked into, so you are fair point on some of the questions outstanding, but I'll let Key answer that.
So the $49 million was based on the, Dennis mentioned in the presentation, we had prepared a capacity assurance report. In the report, we assume that the city will pay for the upper lateral. We are not really looking at funding sources in our CAR, so that $48 million is actually from the capacity assurance report.
So just to...
And I would just add that that's one of the purposes of the upper lateral pilot program, is we have a general estimate and budget in the capacity assurance report that's, as Keith said, included in the $49 million. But what we hope to do is get better information to either confirm that the budget for the upper lateral repairs is adequate, or hopefully we can conclude that by doing a higher volume that maybe the cost is lower.
And I think just to bring, I guess a follow-up question I'd have on that is there are costs for the lift stations, there's costs for replacing main lines and streets and whatnot, which we have already started doing some of that work. We have a good sense of what the costs are for that aspect of the work. Is that correct?
That is correct, yes.
So then one of our biggest outstanding questions is what the cost is actually going to be per residence in these priority basins if the city council ultimately chooses to pay for the sewer lateral replacement costs. We're still waiting on that number, right?
That is also correct.
Yep. Hang on one second.
Sorry, thank you. So just to clarify, the $49 million is an upper estimate, so potentially it could be less than that?
That is correct. The $49 million, assuming that we are doing the entire project listed in the capacity assurance report, there are a very likely chances that we know by November of 2018 that we may achieve compliance. So at that time, the city may slow down the program. In the meantime, like Dennis said in his presentation, the 4 priority basins are what we are targeting. So assuming that we get to a lot of these private upper lateral, we're going to be reducing the flow, the INI, by about 70%. So we could push the sewer output to less than 14 million gallons per day. And that is what I mean by substantial compliance with the consent decree.
Okay. Another question.
It seems like there's an inspection factor here. If you inspect the properties, and I guess my question, what percentage of inspected properties end up having to do repair? Because that would be a major factor if...
The quick answer would be just about all of them. In the unlikely chances when we review those inspection report, we would see some fairly good lateral, but most of them, they are in really bad shape. Those are 70-plus years old clay pipe, and they are brittle. You saw a couple of pictures on the screen. You see separated joints with root balls growing in it, with broken pipes and joints.
I just want to maybe add another point to the previous question. So I think, as Keith said, confident in the $49 million estimate. But one of the things that we need to better understand through the inspections and the pilot program and everything is the extent to which there are inflow sources. Inflow, as you can visualize, if you have a connected roof leader or you have an illegal connection from the storm sewer, that's a high volume of water that's getting into the sanitary sewer system. So eliminating an inflow source is very cost effective compared to perhaps fixing a few cracked pipe or whatever. So when we get in and we do inspections and when we do the lateral repairs, that will also give us a handle on the percentage of inflow sources versus infiltration or cracked pipes. To the extent that there are more inflow sources identified, that could potentially lower the cost of the overall program.
And I would just one other point that I think is helpful, and I'm not a sewer system expert, so I'm get to learn along with you guys on this stuff. But Mike actually is a YouTube star as well. There's a YouTube video that's been produced that explains some of our challenges on the sewer system here in MILLBRAE, and he had a great point he made in there, which is on a typical day there was about 400,000 gallons of sewer that was being moved out of this particular basin, but on a rainy day, I think that went to 2 million was the number, right? So that means there's, right? You got 1.5 million or 3 times more than what of just a stormwater system stuff that is making its way into the sewer system and going out. So clearly, the rain is infiltrating, rain is having a big impact. So addressing those inflow sources we'd love to see that number come way down from a 3x factor, or technically it's a 4x factor on that. Yeah.
Couple of quick points, and I don't know how much it'll relate. I live in Burlingame. I have a business here, a building here in Millbrae. In Burlingame, my lateral pipe was constantly being penetrated by shrubbery and bushes in the front yard, and the house is about 100 years old. And so at least once a year I was having it roto-rooted, but I realized that it's a very old pipe and it probably wasn't in great shape. Never had a video put through it. But anyway, had it pipe bursting, I think that's the terminology, and had a new pipe put in from the house to the clean out on the street. And that cost me about little under $5,000 with a clean out outside of the house, which it didn't have before. And the sewer system has worked marvelously since then. So I just wanted to throw that in as a point of reference. Second comment is in regards to the charging, and I'm not sure that we're supposed to comment on that now, but it seems to me that if there's probably a lot of people that have fixed incomes in these areas that have been there for a long, long time. If there's a way for the city to share the cost of fixing the lateral in their property, I think it would be a big help to them, because getting a $4,000, $5,000, $6,000 hit is a tough thing to take for people that have fixed income. I'd like to come back and make another comment, but let's open it up.
Okay. Let me come around over here real quick.
How do the homeowner apply for the assistance or rebate if they had recently fixed their sewer system? Is there a
Two ways. First, you can come by City Hall, come to a Public Works counter and get an application form for rebate. Or second, you can go online and go to Public Works Engineering's website, and there's a rebate application form that you would download, fill out the form, submit your permit with your proof of payment, and it will take us a few weeks to process that.
So one thing to clarify too is it's not that you do a $1,000 credit only at the time of a transaction or real estate sale, but as long as somebody fixes their lateral, you'll issue a $1,000 credit. Okay.
Is that for commercial property too?
Sorry, the question is that available for commercial properties as well, or only residential?
Yes, it is available for commercial property.
Congratulations, you just got $1,000 coming to this meeting this morning. Okay. I can't guarantee that your application will make it through, by the way. I'm not legally in that position, but.
So is the reason for the smoke testing to detect if the rainwater is getting into the, yes, okay. Okay. And we did the same thing as you did in Burlingame. We were proactive with changing our lateral because of tree roots and whatnot. And I believe the cost was very similar to what you said, and it was well worth it. Also in South San Francisco, they're giving notices to their residents that they have to change their sewer lateral. So it's happening in other cities as well. And the homeowner was responsible for the whole cost. I don't know if there was a rebate program or not. So we're not alone in this.
Dennis, actually, can I just, 1 second, I'll come right back to you. Could you just comment in general about the challenge of kind of Clean Bay and Baykeeper, and the fact that, as to the point made by the resident, that we're not the only city in town on this issue?
Yeah, no, that's absolutely correct. Yeah, I think as a general statement, communities in the Bay Area, both on the peninsula and in the East Bay, basically deferred investing in their sewer systems for 20, 30 years. I mean, it's not the place that most public agencies want to spend their money, because obviously have a lot of other priorities that the customers and the ratepayers want to see made. So you have a case of deferred maintenance over the past 20, 30 years. And as I mentioned in the presentation, Baykeeper saw these sanitary sewer overflows occurring throughout the Bay Area, occurring here in MILLBRAE, and so there was the effort to get the public agencies to improve their sewer systems. The mechanism was the consent decree, And so Millbrae, much like many other communities, Hillsborough, San Mateo, all along the peninsula in the East Bay, are under similar requirements to improve their sewer systems. The Capacity Assurance Report and the Sewer Modernization Program has been designed to invest money in the existing sewer system, repair the system, get it into a state of good repair so that hopefully once the program is completed and the expenditures have been made, that going forward, the city can invest a modest amount and keep it in good repair.
Some of you may have read some headline this week. City of San Mateo just started campaigning for their wet weather program, and that is estimated at $900 million.
Okay, there was a. Did you see your hand? Yeah.
Yes, I'm interested in more the strategy for the city. I think the mentioning of the $49 million program, that's targeted for just the priority basins, or is it for the entire city? And then also the $18 million, and that includes upper and lower, I understand. It was also mentioned that the 70%, we expect that the upper laterals to contribute about 70% of the I&I. Is that really the correct number? And also with the $18 million we plan to spend to address in 2018, will that, and that is something that you folks will believe will make a significant effort in maybe getting completion with the compliance with the requirements. And lastly, is the work going to be done by the city folks alone, or is it going to be done by contractors? Because pipe bursting, I believe, I don't know if that's a technology that city folks will be doing on their own, or is going to be done by contractors. Otherwise, the escalation or the contracting community costs may not be what you would expect to have to pay.
Thank you. All very good, detailed questions. Happy to address a number of those.
So let me address a couple of your questions, and then Key will address the question of how the work's going to be performed. So the $49 million program covers the work in the priority basins that are shown on these maps, but it also includes all the other improvements throughout the system that are needed to come into compliance with the consent decree. I mentioned hydraulic capacity improvements to the Madrone pumping station and the force main that leaves that pump station. Mike Killigrew mentioned grade 4 and grade 5 defects. That's a severity scale. When the city goes in and video inspects the public sewer systems, they'll find isolated areas of a defect, a severe defect, 4 or 5. So the city is going in throughout the entire, going in citywide, and when those video inspections identify defects, primarily grade 4 and grade 5 defects, they go in and repair those defects, whether they're in the priority basins or not. With respect to the 70% I&I number, so other studies, when communities go in and they make repairs to the sanitary sewer system, and they do flow monitoring before the repairs and after the repairs in a defined geographic basin, the information suggests that if you just repair the public sewers only and you ignore the laterals, when you make those repairs, you get about 30 to 50% removal of I&I, infiltration, inflow. But if you, in a geographic basin, if you do the public sewers and the laterals, you get up to 70% removal of I&I.
And to answer your questions about the construction work, we are working on the design packages for Madrone Basin 1, 2, and 3 currently. We should have that completed by the end of October. And the city has to go to a public bidding process under Public Contract Code. So notice the bidders will be advertised in the newspaper. Contractor will be invited to submit sealed bids to the project, and we'll publicly open the bids and select the low bid and go to council for award. And construction will likely start sometime in January of 2018. And on Hillcrest Sub-Basin 3 packages, we will be starting design sometime in November, and it will be about 6 months after that. We will likely begin construction in the Hillcrest Basin and springs of next year.
So I guess one thing to be clear on is our city staff referenced that they're making some repairs throughout the community and doing some of the work currently. So the aspect of the work that's being done where we're looking to actually contract out to contractors is going to be, what's the nature of that work?
Those are all going to be the capital project, replacing the main line in the street, replacing the lower lateral as the phase one of the project. What Mike and Chris are doing out there, a lot of that's more maintenance-oriented type of work, such as clearing blockages. They would inspecting the main line and also make repair to manholes or do some point repair to the system.
And my recollection from our prior conversations in terms of our capacity for assessing the challenges across the system is we've now run cameras through most of our system at this point and done an assessment. Is that accurate?
We have done, we had completed actually inspecting our system about 3-4 years ago. We are starting on cycle 2 now. Every 5 years or so, we like to put our camera in every single pipeline in our city to look at the conditions. And we'll continue to rate them on the program that has been used by a lot of the city.
So the idea there is we can understand the state of our pipe system and then prioritize a repair so we can efficiently go about executing on this process. Okay. Sir.
Can you elaborate on your 20-year, did you say guarantee in terms of work that you do on inspections of lateral work?
This is the 20-year guarantee when you get the work done and you show a certificate and you improve it. Okay, what that means for the city's perspective? Okay.
It is not a guarantee, rather it is a exemption. The city allowed that once you replace your sewer lateral, you are exempt from having to inspect them for the next 20 years when you sell your property. For example, if you sell your property, you did an inspection, and then we require that you replace the pipeline, and then you did the complete replacement, and with that, from the date of the completion of the replacement of your lateral, you'll be exempt for 20 years from having to do additional inspection.
So the benefit there then is that you don't have to pay an inspection fee in the next 20 years should the house change owners and you would otherwise have to go through an inspection if you didn't do the repairs. Is that right?
And also, in addition to selling your houses that the city requires you to inspect and repair your lateral, if you do any major remodeling to your house, for example, if you're adding more than 25% more square footage to your house, or you're adding any more bathroom or plumbing fixtures, you are required also to inspect and repair your lateral. And that 20 years exemption will apply to all cases.
Did you have a follow-up question?
So I bought a house 2 or 3 years ago, and the homeowner had to do some sewer lateral work. And so several months ago, I had to do another $10,000 work of the lateral. So the city passed that work. So I'm wondering why I had to spend major money again.
I don't think I have an answer for that, but if you like to call us, we can look into your address specifically and look at the past inspection and see what happened there. You can just stop by City Hall front counter.
Okay. Yes.
When do you anticipate that you'll be making the decision in terms of the cost-sharing responsibility? And also, where do we know that once you make the decision from the website or, any channel that we know about this information?
So I would, one point I will make is the City Council has been very vocal about wanting to ensure the public knows about this. I mean, you all are here today as evidence of that effort. I'm just curious, by the way, how many of you got a piece of mail that brought you here today? All right, a few hands. And how many of you saw Facebook advertising that got you here? Okay. All right. So we've had lots of venues that we have on this effort, trying to get people aware of what's going on, get you all down here. So on the city website, if you go there right now and then you put in / sewer improvement, is that right, Trent? sewer modernization, excuse me. If you put that into the URL, there's a whole web page dedicated to answering the questions, providing information, access to the CAR report, the consent decree, lots of documentation available there for residents to read about and learn about this whole program that we're going through. And we'll continue to be updating that website as we go along to provide information to the public. This is also not the last of these public forums we're going to be doing. I believe we have at least one more planned and maybe even more potentially after that, depending upon how things go. I'll let Key talk about the schedule and timeline with council.
I think the earliest that we will go to council for some recommendation would be the end of November, but potentially that can be pushed into January of next year.
And some of the factors there that we're waiting for are to get our bids back, right, so we've sought quotes to go do this work to get the assessment of how much it's going to cost with this pilot program of 20, which obviously has an impact on our budget plans and expectations. And council needs to understand what the costs are should they, since they have policy options, if one of the policy options they choose is to have the city involved paying for a portion or all of the sewer lateral replacements in those priority basins, they need to know what those costs are that they're committing the city to be involved with. Okay? Other questions? Oh, okay.
Can you share with us a little bit more about your pilot program, like in terms of the criteria to be included in the pilot program, or have you started, you have not started, and so on and so forth?
We actually already started on the pilot program, and the reason why we chose the Madrone Basin because the city went in there in 2015. We replaced the main line and we replaced the lower lateral. And now second phase, we pick about 20 homes out of those project area from a few years ago. And we are testing the complexity and complication about working in on private property. So we will be actually opening bid on Tuesday, go to council in October to make a recommendation to award it to the selected contractor, and work will likely begin in November and will last about 2 months.
And did that sufficiently answer your question? Okay. I would just note that, part of this pilot project is not just we certainly are mostly interested in the economics, but we're also interested in the logistics, right? You can well imagine if you're going into this basin, we're doing hundreds of replacements of sewer laterals. It is a construction project. It's a major project. It can be very disruptive. So some of the things that we think about are, if we do it with a contractor and they can be coordinated in the work they do, yes, you could have a week of pain and heartache, but maybe we can be done with your street sooner rather than later, as opposed to stringing it out over 2 years with multiple different contractors from different people being involved. So there are convenience questions that we're also considering, the process of working with residents and private property to get on and off and coordinate that effort. There's a lot of thought process we have to put into that. And then one general point I want to make for everybody's benefit here is that part of our effort in having this forum and the discussion is, as you've heard, we're doing work all over the city. So everybody should be seeing at some point work on your street or down the way or by. So we want you to understand why you're being inconvenienced, or why there might be a street closure, or why there's we're moving down to one lane. It's a big major project designed to address some deferred maintenance, get our system up to where we want it to be, and then be able to sustain it there. But we're playing a little bit of catch up, so there's a lot of construction work that's going to be affecting the community as we go about doing this. I saw a hand go up over here.
Yeah. With regard to the lateral, I thought there were different ways of fixing the problem. One was to complete replacement, and another one was putting some form of stuff inside the existing pipes. So with the pilot program that you're doing, when is the pilot program estimated to finish so that we can get the costing information? And also, with regard to the costing information, is this complete replacement of the pipes or some other methods of fixing the problem? Thanks.
Great questions.
So the cost that we're going to be learning from the pilot program would essentially be just replacing the upper lateral. So from a few years ago, the city put in the main line. So we put in the lower lateral, including the clean out. So now we're going to come back behind here, and then this is where we're going to start bursting the pipe to the house, and then put another clean out similar like to that somewhere outside of your house, near your house, and a backflow devices also in between the two cleanouts. And that's what we, the pilot program will include, minus the lower lateral, which is usually the more expensive part because you have to trench out to the streets to make the connection.
So I might just add on, the city in the area where this pilot's going to take place a couple of years back did the repairs to the public sewer main and the lower lateral, including this cleanout, which is the shown here. And the pilot program is going to go back, and from this cleanout here back to the house, the upper lateral, the privately owned portion, and make the repair of that portion of the lateral. That's the information and the data and the scalability and the logistics that we want to gather information on for the upper lateral program.
Yeah, so there's a follow-up question, which is the completion date. So I think we're opening up the bids soon, but I'll let you answer that.
We're going to go into construction in November. It will last about 2 months. So by early part of next year, we should get our 20 upper lateral replaced.
Yes, sir.
I don't, pardon me, I don't fully understand the rainwater concept from the point of view that when it was explained, when there are heavy rains, the flow through the sewer system goes up by a factor of 4. Is in your minds, is that all from leakage, or is that from houses being plumbed into the sewer system for their drain water? And second part of that question is, I just got a notice for my building about the smoke testing. And obviously, pumping smoke into the lines, they're going to be looking for this. I know my building is plumbed for the rainwater to go out to the street, but if you have a house that is plumbed into the sewer system, then it's going to start coming out of the gutters and things. And I would think that that makes a whole new situation for the homeowner as to how to manage that water. That's not really a question, it's more of a statement.
It's an important statement, actually. I'm glad you raised that. We'd like to, we'll talk about that a little bit.
And so this four-fold increase that we're seeing at the Madrone pump station, 500,000 during dry weather, and then it goes to 2 million gallons per day in wet weather. That's from both infiltration sources and inflow sources. So the smoke testing is designed to identify inflow sources, which are illegal connections to the sanitary system, roof drains, yard drains, illegal connections from the stormwater system. Those are all direct connections, and the smoke testing helps to identify those direct connections, and they are illegal, and so the code requires that those be disconnected from the sanitary sewer system. And that's the smoke testing. The infiltration also contributes, and that's where the video inspection of the manholes and the sewer laterals and the upper laterals identifies those defects in the piping system that are cracks, that are broken clay pipes, that are infiltration from roots, and those are sources that the complete sewer rehabilitation in the various basins are designed to eliminate.
Regarding the smoke testing, so I received in the mail the notice regarding the smoke testing to begin in September and October. So is the program delayed, and when can we expect that to happen? Is it going to be certain streets sequentially, and I'm questioning the timing.
So let's answer both the current timing and then how it relates to our broader program efforts.
Smoke testing is going to be done block by block, so you would get more notices as we get to your block, and you would see some signage that will be posted. For example, we worry the fire department might respond to it when they see smoke. So it's a coordinated effort with public safety as well. And how does that relate to the overall wet weather program? Smoke testing is the first thing that we intend to do, and on this current project, we are doing about one half of the city, right, Mike? About one half, And then it should go pretty quick, about 2 to 3 months. We should finish the project and get the result. And then we'll continue on to the next phase, which is the remaining of the city sometime next year, next spring perhaps.
So I think one question that was, or a point that was raised by this gentleman was just this question of if there's illegal connections right now, what's going to be the kind of the consequence for the homeowner, or how do they address those things, right? Because it kind of changes the question. So, yes. Yes. I have a friend. So, can we talk about that a little bit?
Yep. So, for example, if your house is chosen that the city will come in, assuming that the city will pay to replace the upper lateral for you, for your uncle. So when they come in, and your uncle going to have a few of those illegal connections drain into the sewer lateral, and we're going to disconnect all of that when we pipe burst the upper lateral into it. So as a property owner, you will have to spend some money, replumb those illegal piping and bring them into the appropriate system, which is the storm system, or into the landscape area.
Sir.
How come we can't put some of these fees on our property tax, like South City and San Carlos? I mean, why not?
So the question is, right now these come on a bill you get, as opposed to showing up on a property tax bill, right? And I think so. One this actually came up in the prior, so I'm glad you asked that question. It's one of our frequently asked questions we're going to probably want to address. Let me take a brief stab at it, which is to comment, which is at the end of the day, whether we're collecting it on the property tax bill or another bill, the same amount's going to get collected. We still need to collect the same amount. We still need the same revenue. All those decisions would have been made. A point was made, I believe, by a former mayor that if you run it through the county's property tax bill system, there might be some administrative assessment that they actually charge for the collections process, which means you'd actually get less money back to the city if you try to run it through that particular route. I would let you guys comment on that, but that was a point that was made.
I was just going to make the point that the fee or the charge is the same, whether it's collected on the property tax or collected through the city's wastewater bill. Many jurisdictions don't have a billing mechanism in place, so they default to the property tax as the way to collect the fee.
Okay. Oh, the attorney has something to say, so I'm going to defer to him.
I would like to add something to that point too, because as Ryder said, that question came up last week, and the person who raised it suggested that an accountant may be able to help you benefit with a tax deduction if it's on the property tax bill. And nobody in here is a tax expert, and none of the people speaking on behalf of the city are accountants, and neither am I. But I did ask that question to somebody, and the response was that even if it appears on a property tax bill, it's still not a tax. It shouldn't qualify for a tax deduction. Now, I'm not going to comment on, an accountant's ability to work their magic, but it shouldn't actually make a difference ultimately in your tax burden.
So I have an uncle who's been claiming it. My uncle. Yeah. Okay. There was another question. Somebody over here had a hand up? No? Okay, please.
So, I do want to practice environmental law at some point. So looking at this connection between the storm sewer and the sanitary sewer itself. So you say that the storm sewer, when there's infiltration, it goes into the sanitary sewer. Does it inflow back the same way? So does the water that comes from the sanitary sewer go into the storm water that goes into our bay? I guess is my question.
Great question. Careful, she's a future attorney.
Yes. So what's shown here is the way that it's supposed to work. So you'll have a catch basin in the street, and the catch basin will deliver the water to the separate stormwater system. When we refer to an illegal connection, this catch basin would be connected directly to the sanitary system. And if that's the case, if this were connected to the sanitary system, that would be an illegal connection, and we want to make it look like this.
General point, right? It's far more expensive for us to be routing water to our wastewater treatment plant than it is to just route it into the stormwater system, right? Fair point. I mean, because you're basically treating water that doesn't necessarily need to be treated. And there's a whole different schedule of addressing remediation and stormwater cleanliness. That's completely separate discussion. All right, please.
I'm just thinking about older homes in the area. would it be more prevalent to have, your uncle have one of them put in the house versus they suppose?
There's a lot of uncles in old houses. Why don't you guys comment on correlation between age of house and state of affairs with the sewer lateral and legal connections? Any observations?
It is kind of situation specific, but generally the older the home, the more likely that repairs are needed, and if connections were made improperly 20, 30, 40 years ago, that those show up in some of the testing that we're doing. Yeah. Yeah, and I think that as we discussed earlier, this is a Bay Area-wide problem, and so I think the staffs and the folks that work on the wastewater system, the storm system, much better understand the way that things are supposed to be plumbed and the way that the maintenance that's required to keep the system in good working order. So there's more focus on it now. So hopefully, as these repairs get made and going forward, we'll have less of the kinds of problems that we experienced decades ago.
Other questions? Oh, yep.
Thank you. Just a general question. We're assuming that we're going to meet our compliance deadline next year. Are there penalties if we don't? Because as you know, with any public project, timeliness isn't always met.
Right. So the question is, what's the concern if we don't hit our timeline, right, meet the consent decree? I'm going to actually have our attorney answer that one right now.
Yeah, that's a great question. There are a couple of consequences that are particularly important. There are some penalties associated, monetary penalties. The monetary penalties themselves are not that steep. The larger issue in failing to meet the deadline on the consent decree is that it extends the consent decree. It keeps it going, and the consent decree is essentially a court order. So it requires the city to take the measures that it's taking to comply with the consent decree, and by doing so really ties the city's hands in terms of setting policy for improvements it wants to make both to the system and other budgeting priorities it has, because it has to dedicate resources to dealing with the consent decree and to get out from under the consent decree. So it's a very prescriptive set of requirements that the city has to meet, and therefore it channels those resources that are required directly into that effort. And so the sooner the city can get out of it, the freer it becomes to essentially set the priorities that the public wants it to.
So, and two other points I would just make is number one. Not everybody feels this way, but it's good to do the right thing for the environment and to take care of the bay. So we'd like to prevent as much sanitary sewer system overflows as possible. And if we can do our part to get there, that would be great. And if we can do it cost effectively, that would be even better. And the second point is that, this project, we're talking about it a lot in the context of this consent decree, but ultimately when we come out the other end of having resolved our consent decree issue, we will also have a much improved sewer system and have made up for some deferred maintenance issues and have made capital and plat investments that are part of a key piece of infrastructure that's the underpinning of our modern civilization. So there's there's a bonus win there ultimately.
Yeah, I have a question about the 49 million, right? Now, we have to pay it back, is that right? And how are we going to pay it back? Is it going somehow to rate increase, which is a perpetual thing? Because once you put it in the rate increase, it's like forever. Normally the rate doesn't come down. So I just want to know.
That's a great question. In fact, I'd like to steer the conversation just for a couple of minutes to go back to one of the priority questions we had about the fairness question that's come up, and I'd like to really probe you guys on it. But before I do, can we talk a little bit about the Clean Bay fee and its relevance to that $49 million number?
So the city council adopted a rate structures in 2015. At that point, we included a new fee called the SSO, Sanitary Sewer Overflow. So we were charging our single family. Actually, it was a flat fee of $23.90 a month on your sewer bill that you have been paying, and that is going into funding the $49 million program. And in July of 2017. We revisited the SSO surcharge, and we had reduced the fee slightly for single-family home. And for non-single-family home, the Clean Bay fee, which is a new fee that actually went up on that. So in the next, we have been collecting the fee since July, I think it was September of 2015. So that will go into funding the program.
So my understanding, and this is where I need you guys to tell me if I'm wrong, is that Clean Bay fee is generating enough revenue to fund the $40 million project at this point. $49 million.
Correct, and it will be a combination of pay-as-you-go, such as the Clean Bay fee that we are collecting, as well as some external borrowing using revenue bonds type of measure, and that will be paid back over time, and it will be all built into the sewer rates.
So, I think the bottom line is right now you're paying a fee. That fee is already paying for this $49 million program, so there shouldn't be an associated cost increase on your sewer bill given the current anticipated economics of this program. It should be covered by the current Clean Bay fee. So the question is it included in the sewer fee currently? Yeah, and the answer is yes. It's on the bill. It's itemized separate on the bill?
It is. You will see a separate line item called Clean Bay fee of $20+ a month.
So then the follow-up question is, when will that fee ever disappear?
It may disappear sometime once the program is completed. Yes.
Part of the answer may depend on, do we want a Clean Bay 30 years from now? So that's a fair question. Right now, we have no anticipated plan for dropping that fee. Is that an accurate statement?
Yes, that is correct.
Okay. So the comment is that pipes will last for only 20 years, right? So let's address that comment real quick though, because we should talk about infrastructure and lifespan and whatnot. So can we talk a little bit about expected lifespan of pipe like this and kind of these improvements?
My experience is that if you have a well-maintained system, so that you're out there cleaning and inspecting and everything, that these pipe materials will last 75, 80 years. So that's the goal. And these new materials that are being put in that Mike described, the high density polyethylene plastic pipe, much better performance than the industry standard 40, 50 years ago, which was the vitrified clay pipe that we talked about earlier.
Yes, sir.
But did I not read that the water rates are going up, and that's basically the sewer also?
So the water rates are going, well, I'll let you talk about this.
The water rate will go up in October. October 1st, there's a separate, that is for your drinking water, just for water. And sewer rates increases was started in 2015.
So a quick clarifying question. Do we treat the water system and the sewer system as separate enterprise funds in the city?
The short answer is yes. And then you get a bill from us. I don't want to call it a sewer bill every 2 months, and that includes both water and sewer on it.
So my understanding, just the reason I asked about, and this is a little bit of kind of government speak, but the reason I asked about the clarifying question on if we treat them as separate enterprise funds is you can't have one enterprise fund subsidize the other. So you can't have the water system rates subsidize fix-ups in our sewer system because we treat them as separate enterprise funds. Okay? All right. Any other questions? Otherwise, I want to poke a little bit more on this question, the fairness question that we've been asking at the start. Okay, so we are looking at a situation where council is going to face some options, one of which is to consider funding the, essentially paying for the upper sewer lateral replacements or for cities in the 2 priority basins that are on the map over here and you saw before. At its most basic level, what that means is we're all paying a Clean Bay fee, but the upper sewer laterals will be replaced for a subset of the actual users in our community. Some might view that as a subsidy or a giveaway. On the other hand, you can view it as we have a community-wide problem of getting out under this consent decree. We're all facing this challenge, and there's a cost-effective way to get it done, and the engineers have decided that going after those basins is the most cost-effective way. So my question to you, I've heard one comment about wanting to help out the elderly if they're on a fixed income, and maybe the city should be contributing some costs. We had some suggestions in prior meetings about putting a lien on properties as kind of an opportunity to come back, and frankly, I don't know the legal implications of that, but as getting a clawback on the homeowner if the city paid for their upper sewer lateral. Do any of you have any thoughts, concerns, problems if the city council chooses to or not to go about funding or supporting the replacement of the upper sewer laterals in these particular sections of town?
Based on my understanding of the question I posed just now about the 49 million, it was already stated that in 2015 there was a rate increase, and the purpose of that rate increase for the sewer is connected to the 49, right? So why do we now need more money when that 49 is handled by the rate increase?
So I believe, and Key, you can just tell me if I'm wrong, then I'll hand you the mic, but I believe it's pretty much the same fee. It was retitled and restructured a bit, but the same fee is still in place that was passed. So it wasn't additive. The fee that we recently came up with replaced that prior fee. And for the average single-family residence in the city, it actually dropped your fee a little bit month to month in that cost. All right, so back to my tax equity question.
Well, I think if I'm following her question, is it sounded like we've already paid for this through the fees. You know, the 49 million has been budgeted for, and we're paying for it. So the question is why, when we have to do the work, we have to pay for it again.
In other words, why would we ask the homeowners to pay for it when we theoretically have already subsidized to pay for it with the Clean Bay fee? Very fair question. Yeah. So I will hand this over to somebody.
So let me one of the issues to kind of put a sharper point on Ryder's question. Right now, in the $49 million are funds to inspect and repair all of the privately owned upper laterals in the four areas, the four subbasins that are shown on this map. So the questions come up in other discussions. You know, the current city ordinance requires that if you sell your home anywhere outside those color areas, you have to, or do a major remodel, you have to go in and inspect your upper lateral, and if it's defective, you, the homeowner, has to pay for the cost of that repairs. So there's the issue of who pays for the upper laterals that need to be replaced, inspected and repaired and replaced in these shaded areas versus the current city ordinance, which is clearly the homeowner's responsibility to inspect and pay for the lateral repairs, and they get a $1,000 credit.
So the 49 million covers our estimated cost to replace the upper sewer laterals in the colored areas. I'm making Dennis nervous. I better.
No, there are the $49 million includes funds to repair the upper laterals in these colored basins, all of them. Only in the colored basins, yes. The city council has not yet decided how those costs for the upper lateral repairs should be allocated. And there's three basic choices. Either the city pays, the homeowner pays, or there's some cost sharing for the lateral repairs in these identified areas, in the colored areas.
So hopefully that makes more clear my question I was posing about the equity question, right? If you don't necessarily live in one of the colored areas, then this, depending upon council policy, they will not be, if council chose to pay for the upper sewer lateral replacement to move along the process of getting those repaired and fixed up to meet consent decree requirements, that would not be a benefit for a resident who lives outside those colored areas. it would be a benefit to every resident that we address our legal requirements. It does not address the, but it, well.
Yeah, and actually kind of have a follow-up clarifying question, which I think goes to the points that are raised. So the $49 million, if the city council chooses not to pay for the entire cost of the replacement in the 4 priority subbasins, either cost share or put that on the homeowner, does that free up some portion of that $49 million for other parts of improvements to the system?
Yes, it lowers the cost. The short answer is yes, it will lower the overall program cost.
So if there is a surplus, so it doesn't take 49 million. So we have the 49 million, but we don't have to necessarily use all the funds. Where would that, I guess, surplus go? Do we put it back into all our sewer systems for proactive steps in the future, or what do we do with that money if there is a surplus?
We will likely lower the Clean Bay monthly charges, or we may stop the Clean Bay fee at one point if we no longer need the money to conduct the wet weather program.
It might be useful to kind of expand on the enterprise fund concept of both the sewer and the water. The sewer system is not really technically the city, but it's a fund kept separate from the operation of anything else, and it's basically a separate pot of money. And maybe somebody can explain.
So I'm assuming, Peter, partly what you're referring to is this idea that, say there was a surplus, we can't turn around and use it to pay for Parks and Rec programming, for example, right? So, you want to explain enterprise funds?
So there are primarily two large enterprise funds in this city, the Water Enterprise Fund and the Sanitation Enterprise Fund. Let's focus on the Sanitation Enterprise Fund. That fund itself is about, we generate about $8.5 million in revenue a year. And that is to maintain and upkeep for the 55 miles of sewer main line. And on top of that, we also own about 2/3 of the lower lateral in the city, and that equates to about 22 miles of lower lateral. And we have a sewer treatment plant down by at the end of MILLBRAE Avenue off of 101, and that is also part of the enterprise fund. So that sewer enterprise fund, the sewer service charges that we collect every month, will go into funding the operations of that only, and not to supplement other city functions.
Okay. Now you learned about enterprise funding on the same morning you learned about sewer systems. Yes, sir.
What is the escalation factors that's used for that $49 million? Is it 4%? Because what I'm trying to say is that given the bidding climate in the contracting industry, I'm pretty familiar with it, and also the fact that all the other cities along the peninsula are also doing their programs, the contracting community is probably going to be more selective in bidding contracts, and the prices they're going to bid are a little bit going to be higher than what you would expect in the original report. I think the likelihood is that if you have any savings in the upper lateral program, it will go toward funding the deficits in your estimates.
The construction cost escalator we use in our program cost is between 25 to 40%. We had actually conducted our previous estimate was about 35 million. So in 2017, we updated the construction cost. Therefore, it jumped to about 49 million. So it's a huge increase.
Any other questions or comments? I tried real hard to poke you guys on this question of sharing costs and how that's burdening. Nobody seems too fired up about it.
It's just my personal thought. You know, I'm a homeowner, so if I were to pay for the repair, I'm willing to do that. But if there's a way that if the city can come up with some kind of assistance whereby you can select some contractors that kind of like put a boundary on the cost, in terms of the repairing. So if that is affordable, then I think that is something that's reasonable for me as a homeowner, to assume that cost responsibility. So.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments? Any other questions in general? Anything else that you gentlemen need to say?
Email us. For those of you that have any ideas, please feel free to email us. If you can think of any ways that you would think that how we should be funding the program, whether we pay the entire 100%, we share that with the property owner, or have the property owner pay the entire cost, let us know.
Okay, one final question. Close us out.
Thank you. So when you're ready to make your recommendations to the council, will you make those recommendations public?
So the question is, will we make those recommendations public before they go to the council?
Absolutely. It also will be a public meeting during council meeting, and report will be available prior to the meeting that you can download from the city website.
And fair to say it'll be on a council agenda, which also is an opportunity for the council, for the public to provide feedback on the agenda item as well. So you'll have a chance to offer direct feedback there. And I'm quite certain if you get a chance to run to your council members at the grocery store or some other community event, you want to talk to them about this issue. Now that you've been empowered with sewer knowledge, you can have a coherent conversation with them and understand the complexities of the issues we face. Thank you all very much for coming out today and being engaged residents in the city. Great city of Millbrae. It's a beautiful day that you sacrificed to be with us here this morning. Please help us drink coffee, take donuts. I don't want to eat any of those. Leave me one apple, and have a great day. Thank you so much.
You did a great job. Thank you.
You're watching MCTV, Millbrae Community Television, Comcast Channel 27, AT&T UVerse Channel 99, and streaming live at www.mctv.